All right, what is up, my friends? Welcome to Duskmourn. Complete set review. I'm going to be going over every single card in Duskmourn House of Horror, the brand new Magic set, for constructed and for limited. All the cards, even the commons, every single card, organized into color order. It'll be here on stream. It'll be there on YouTube. If you miss anything, it'll be on YouTube. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and watch it and check it out on there. If you're on the YouTube, support the channel, support the content, of course. These are a lot of work, and I had to rebuild the whole thing, honestly, in the new computer. It looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it, though. And we're going to give out the awards we always do, our Best in Show award, our Sleeper Card award, our Trap Card award, and our Bombin Common award. And, of course, I want to remind you about Tenny Bruce happening next week, Wednesday, early access, 2 p.m. I'll be playing all these cards in the early access stream, which should be a lot of fun. I built my 10 new decks as I always do, and I hope to see you there. Let's just get rolling, all right, with white. And our very first card, an Acrobatic Cheerleader, 2 mana for a common 2/2 human survivor. Now, of course, we're going to go through the mechanics as we go here. Each time we hit a mechanic we haven't seen yet, I'll explain it. This is a survival mechanic. This is a mechanic seen on green and white creatures. A mechanic that basically says, at the beginning of your second main phase, if this creature is tapped, you get a bonus. In this case, it puts a flying counter on it. So, 2 for 2. Whenever you hit survival, it gets a flying counter, it becomes a flyer. Pretty good, honestly. This is a good, solid common. Nothing crazy here. Obviously not like a super high pick or anything, but good, solid, aggressive common if you're looking for a beatdown creature, which of course the survival decks are, as well as others. There are other ways to tap things, which we'll find out later on. In constructed, you can use vehicles or like springleaf drum effects. In limited, there are effects tailored for it too. And again, we see here our first of many really creepy arts, but good common. Cult Hero is next for another good common. 3 mana for a 3/3 human doctor. Has the Eerie mechanic. Eerie. And whenever enchantment ETBs or whenever you fully unlock a room, more on that later, this gains lifelink. So it's basically just Constellation with a little bit of extra upside based on rooms. We'll see those in a little bit. But basically Constellation. It's enchantment fall, if you will. And this is just a good card. You know, 3/3 is a fine rate. And lifelink is really, really powerful. Obviously, you want to play this in an enchantment-focused deck. If you can trigger this almost every turn, this card's quite good. The one thing to watch out for with these Eerie cards is that whenever you have a card that keys off another card type, but isn't that type itself, you run into a problem where you can have too many payoffs or enablers. We see this with Prowess a lot, right? Where Prowess cares about non-creature spells, but most Prowess threats are also creatures. So like if you have 40 creatures with Prowess and 2 spells, it doesn't work very well. But if you have 1 Prowess creature and 40 spells, it also doesn't work very well either. So keep an eye out and keep a little bit of a grain of salt on the things that pay you off but aren't the type themselves. So the next culted you play, for example, would not trigger this, which is a little weird, but still a fine card. This is a solid kind of limited filler card, but good in enchantment decks, really. That's really it. Emerge from a Cocoon is next, and we're just starting off with all the common kind of archetype cards. So the black-white archetype is all about reanimation. There's a lot of graveyard stuff in this set between Manifest Dread and more, and this is a 5-mana Zombify, gain 3 life. Normally this card would be really bad in most formats, but there are a lot of really good payoffs for black-white reanimation targets that are huge uncommons and stuff. And of course, tons of ways to put cards in the graveyard. I think it's going to be a sneakily good card and a very fun deck to draft. Not really a super high pick because only one deck will want this card, but pretty cool, honestly. Cool to see. And then that life buffer is kind of nice too, so you take some hits early, get yourself set up, and get your boom boom back and gain some life. So, cool archetype card. Nothing crazy, not a high pick, but should be good in the decks that it's good in. Enduring Innocence is next. Please work, please work, please work. Yeah, my buttons worked. Best in Show for white. I think this card is incredible. White 1 for a 2/1 lifelink. It's a Sheep Glimmer. All right, so whenever one or more creatures you control with power 2 or less ETBs, draw a card only once a turn. So we've seen this before, right? This is a Welcoming Vampire. Seen this on Toscana's Welcome. Pretty common effect. It's been pretty good in Standard, but this has the Enduring ability. So this is a cycle of rares. I guess the rares have them, but where when it dies, if it was a creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control as just an enchantment. So basically, this thing dies, and it comes back as an enchantment, not a creature anymore, but still triggers all of your card draw effects, which is great because that's much harder to kill. So that's really cool, right? So this card is just, you play it, it's got a reasonable combat ability, If it stays in play, you play more things to draw cards. Awesome. If you just block with it immediately or they kill it immediately, that card draw effect is still hanging out, which is awesome. And it's also an enchantment, so it triggers all of your eerie effects or enchantment effects, stuff like that too. No, it does not trigger itself. It says one or more other creatures you control enter. So that would be insane. If it triggered on itself, it would be one of the best cards I've said, I think. But really, really solid card. Looks really exciting. And again, the biggest fear for a card like Duskmourn's Welcome or Welcoming Vampire is how bad it is against aggro. And you are totally fine just throwing this thing in front of the bus. You know, block a thing, gain some life, hopefully trade, and get that value later, which is really, really cool too. So I think this card's great. It's an absolute bomb in Limited. I think it's a great card. And Constructed, and I'm looking forward to playing with it. Enduring Endurance is your best in show for white. Up next, a big reprint. Ethereal Armor, one of the better auras of all time, actually. 1 mana for an enchantment aura, enchant creature. Plus +1 for each enchantment you control and has first strike. So obviously, this card's really good in aura decks and enchantment decks. The big thing here is that it counts up all your enchantments, obviously. This card saw a ton of play in Boggles decks in various formats where you're playing them, you know, these creatures that can't be targeted, put the armor on it, make it huge. This is obviously a kind of card that will get you blown out if you're too careless with it. Put on a creature, they kill your creature, you get 2 for 1. But in decks built around it, this could be a serious player Constructed. And then in Limited, normally creature auras aren't great in Limited, but the ceiling of this card is so high, it's worth the risk, I think, in a lot of ways. So, really cool card for auras decks. Really, really cool card for enchantment decks. I think this will be a player in Constructed, and then also a good card in Limited. And just a cool card. I haven't seen this card in a long time, right? So Ethereal Armor returns. Exercise is next. Not exercise, like, not X or size. Like, it's creepy and shit, you know. 2 mana for a sorcery, exile target, artifact, enchantment, or creature with power 4 or greater. This is a pretty flexible card. This is the kind of card that will definitely see playing Constructed, at least in sideboards or not, where there's a bunch of artifacts and enchantments in this set, and a bunch of artifacts and enchantments in Constructed anyway, just floating around, a bunch of like Boros token decks and things. And this could also kill Shieldred and larger creatures as well. So it's reasonable. The big downside here is that it's a sorcery, not an instant. So a card like Destroy Evil is a lot more flexible. It's an instant, but can't kill artifacts, but you gotta kill Urbrest Forge sometimes. So this is a fringe card, but it will definitely see play Constructed. It's a good thing to have access to. The exile is relevant too. In older formats, you can exile the One Ring and stuff like that too. So great sideboard card. Could definitely be main deckable in some formats if the conditions are right. And then in Limited, this card's probably a starter, I think. I think there's enough artifacts and enchantments and creatures power 4 greater. A lot of the creatures in the set are either artifacts or enchantments, and then exiling is very good too. So this should be a good card Limited, I think. Probably a good one to start. So it's a cool card, cool flexible card. Good to have answers. We like it. Oh fucking shit, man! I can't do it. I can't do this card, folks. I'm sorry. I can't do it. Nope. No. We gotta talk about my past. When I was a small boy, my dad was a huge sci-fi nerd, and he showed me the X-Files when I was like 7 years old. And because of that, I had alien nightmares my entire childhood. All the horror stuff in this set has no effect on me except for the alien stuff, you know? Yeah, like, you couldn't scare me with a horror movie ever, you know, whatever. Freddy Krueger, yada, yada, yada. But Signs, Dark Skies, doesn't make any sense either, but I'm getting chills right now. It's the heebie-jeebies, you know? So, anyway, I'm going to try and pull it together here and evaluate this card, even though it's an alien on a magic card. All right? Okay. Fear of Abduction. 6 mana for a 5/5 enchantment creature, Nightmare. You bet. This will cost to cast this spell. Exile a creature you control. And it's got flying. Whenever it ETBs, exile a creature an opponent controls. And then when this leaves the battlefield, each thing comes back. So basically, you exile your thing and their thing. This is honestly, much as I hate to admit it, a pretty awesome Limited card where you get to kind of kill their best thing, and then you can blink some value thing on your side, and if it dies, they get their thing back, but you get some value on your side too, which is kind of cool too. I'm sorry, they got a hand. I misread it, I apologize. So that's kind of even better actually, because if it's some big thing, they can't kill us or whatever. But this card's good. It's just a good Limited card. You know, it's pretty powerful. It's an answer. It's a little upside. And I'm going to stop looking at this card now, so I don't want to look at it anymore. If that's okay with you folks. Okay, cool. Thank you. Anyway, Fear of Immobility. So there are a lot of fear cards in this set, which are honestly really cool and flavorful. They're all enchantment creatures, so that triggers a lot of the enchantment synergies in this set. So on a thematic level, it's really cool because the idea of fear of immobility or fear of aliens, if you're me, is very cool. And they're all enchantments too, so it's flavorfully mechanical also. Pretty cool. This is a 5-mana common nightmare, 4/4. Whenever Fear of Immobility enters, tap it to one creature, and then if its opponent controls that creature, stun it. So we have Bergstrider here. Everyone knows how much I love Bergstrider in the Kaldheim Limited format. And it's funny because I feel like there's been a lot of power creep since then too. But still, I think this card is quite good. Where I think that you really want to play this in an enchantment deck and have the enchantment part matter too. But this is a really good curve topper. Whether you're on the aggro or on the defensive, imagine playing this, triggering an Eerie effect, tapping their best blocker, attacking with everything. Their blocker's locked down for another turn, and you kind of just keep going. And then also on the defensive side of things, just tap down an attacker, block another attacker. This card's good. You know, I feel like it's weird this card doesn't seem as good as Bergstrider did, because Bergstrider was insane, but I think this card's still very, very good. Not a super high pick because it is a 5-drop, but I think this card's very, very solid, especially if you're in enchantment-based stuff. Also, kind of a cool thing here is that you don't stun your own things. So if you target your own survivor creature, you can trigger the survivor effect and not stun it, which is cool too. So a little upside there. Won't happen often, but kind of cool. So I think this card's good. It's good, solid, limited common. Wouldn't take it super high, but big fan. Fear of Surveillance is next. We're going alphabetically, so a lot of fears coming up. This is a great limited common. 2 mana for a enchantment creature nightmare. It's got vigilance. Whenever it attacks, you surveil 1. This is just a great limited card. It's a 2/2. A 2/2 enchantment creature with vigilance would be a fine limited card anyway, because you just need 2 drops. But the fact that it surveils on every attack is huge. There's a bunch of graveyard stuff in this set, obviously, with Delirium and more, and Surveil helps to fuel that. Also helps to bin your land, which is great too. This is just great. This is just everything you want out of a good 2-drop, because you need good 2-drops in limited. It's very, very important. This is a really, really good one. So, great limited card. Constructed, no, but also being enchantment's important too for Delirium, which more on that later. Casper, the Friendly Ghost. It's nice to have a friendly ghost in a set, right? It's always all this fear crap. 4 mana for a 2/4 flyer, ETB, creature gets +2/+4. I think this card is going to be mostly filler. It's so funny to see a card like this as a person who's played limited for 20 years, because 10 years ago, 15 years ago, this would have been a top common. 2/4 flying body for 4 is like pretty good anyway, and then the buff would be allowing push their attackers. That being said, in modern day limited, this card just isn't that exciting. I think if this card was an enchantment or an artifact or had some extra little oomph to it, to help with synergy stuff too, that would be cool. But as it stands, I think this card is mostly just okay. Just like, if you're aggressive, this card's fine. Pushes damage. It blocks decently well too, but I think overall, mostly limited filler. Ghostly Dancers, more ghosty stuff here. This is a 5-mana rare, 2/5 flyer. This text box kind of buries the lead a little bit. Whenever it enters, return an enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand, or unlock a locked door of a room you control. More on that later. So that's not very exciting, right? It's raising it for enchantments. But it also has the Eerie ability, where whenever an enchantment you control ETBs or you fully unlock a room, make a 3/1 flying spirit token. So that part's insane, right? So it kind of buries the lead. You read the first part, you're like, all right, I guess. But the Eerie part's the real draw to this card. So this is a 2/5 flyer for 5. Play an enchantment, get a 3/1 flyer with no cap. That's insane. All right, so this is obviously an absolute slam dunk, windmill slam bomb in limited. This card will win you a lot of games. Really, really powerful card. And it constructed, I think the 5 mana cost makes it probably a little too much, although it is card advantage, right? You can just play this thing, return enchantment. If they kill it, you still got advantage. And if you untap with it, you go nuts with it too. So I think it's got an outside shot in constructed, but in limited, this card is a backflip windmill slam, one of the best rares of a set for sure. Yeah, the card's just pretty sweet. Cool art, too. I'll get the TV stuff in this set, but Glimmer Seeker's next. 2 mana for a 3/3 human survivor. This has survival. Beginning of your second main phase, if it is tapped, you draw a card. If you control a Glimmer creature, if you don't control a Glimmer creature, create a 1/1 white Glimmer enchantment creature token. So This is a pretty simple, good limited card, right? So these Glimmer tokens are fairly common in the set. They are 1/1 enchantment creature tokens. That's very important for Eerie and other things that care about enchantments, as far as it triggers those. And just making tokens is obviously good anyway, right? So 3/3 attack with it. If it lives, make a token or draw a card. That's pretty good. And the floor here is reasonable. One of the important things about limited is you want your cards to have a good floor, right? So if things don't work out exactly, if they just block this and kill it or trade or whatever, did you get there on your floor? Yeah, this is a fine size creature. It's a 3/3, which is cool too. And there are other creatures that are glimmers as well that aren't tokens too. So it's a good limited card. Obviously better in an Eerie deck or a survival deck, but it's a good solid limited card. Hardened Escort, the mana for a 2/4 human soldier common. Whenever it attacks another creature you control, gets +++, and indestructible to end of turn. So that ability reads very aggressively. Whenever this attacks, you can save another thing. That being said, a 2/4 for 3 is not like that aggressive, so it's kind of a really weird card. It also doesn't really like do that much, right? It can make your survival thing survive, but like it can block this thing and kill it. And I don't know, the body's not that big. I don't know. I think this card, it's probably going to be okay in the survival deck and limited, but I think it's a little underwhelming overall. I think there are better ways to make your survival creatures live. It's also super telegraphed too, so like it's there, it doesn't have haste, they know it's coming. I think this card's kind of eh. Ah! Jump scare. 1 mana instant. Till end of turn, creature gets +2/+2, gains flying, becomes a horror enchantment creature, and this is just other types. So for the most part, this is just +2/+2 and flying till end of turn. That's fine. I think one of the things about this set is because of how survival works, your opponents are going to be super inclined to want to block your survival creatures, making combat tricks better than they would usually be. So that being said, though, this is just a pretty simple card. We see this card in every set. It's usually, fine to okay. In the last set, there was Crumb and Get It, which had a lot more upside. This is just a reasonable card. Kind of cool. You can get flying, maybe go boom. But yeah, it is interesting that thematically, this jump scare card will often make your survivors survive, which is very, very weird. But whatever. How did this happen? Leylines return. Leyline of Hope. Who's excited about that? Not me, right? I hate Leylines, honestly, but whatever. Cool art. 4 mana for an enchantment has the Leyline text. If you don't know what a Leyline does, basically a Leyline is a 4 mana enchantment, and if it's in your opening hand, you put it into play for free. And if you draw it at another point, it costs 1,000,000 mana. So extremely polarizing, where it's either free or insanely overcosted, but that's what Leylines are. So if you would gain life, you gain that much life +1. And as long as you have 7 or more life in your starting total, creatures you control get +2/+2. I think this card's pretty bad. This feels like more of like a commander card, where realistically, you would never, ever, ever want to cast this card for 4 mana. And then if it's free, you're not really getting that much out of it. It's kind of a win more card because if your opponent's attacking you, it doesn't do anything. And then gaining 1 extra life isn't that much either. So I think this card's mostly just a stinker. I'd also not play this card limited because there isn't much life gain stuff in the set. So this card's basically just a dud for me, like most Leylines are. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Lionheart Glimmer's next. Lionheart Glimmer is a 5 mana enchantment creature. It's a cat glimmer. It's got Ward 2. As whenever you attack creatures you control, get +1/+1 till end of turn. So kind of a weird card, right? Like this is a large butted, kind of defensive, expensive creature that can pump your whole team, and that's like pretty powerful. But it's a 2/5 for 5, it's kind of weird. So that being said, I think this card's like a reasonable limited card. There's also not a ton of go wide stuff in this set. Like for example, in Bloomburrow, there was the Rabbit decks, which had a bunch of tokens, and like going wide was like a major part of the whole thing. This set doesn't really have that much of this, but this card's fine. I think this card's reasonable. The ward's pretty good. It does attack as a 3/6, which is kind of cool. But it is a little weird to top your aggro curve with a 2/5, But I think this card's pretty good. Deck dependent for sure. Want to be going wide. It's an enchantment, which is pretty cool also. But yeah, I think overall, just a decent limited card. Ring, ring, ring. Hello? The Living Phone. 2 mana for an artifact creature toy. Whenever it dies, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card power to us among them. Put it in your hand. Put the rest of the bottom of your library in a random order. Interesting. So the mechanic for Boros is like an aggro deck that cares about things with power 2 or less. It's kind of like a small card, a small beatdown kind of deck. This is an interesting card where this card, again, like 10 years ago, would have been unbelievable. Modern day limited, a 2-1 for 3 is pretty damn small. And it is an artifact for Delirium, which is kind of cool. It can draw a card, but you're not always drawing a card with this either. You need to have a lot of 2 power things in your deck. You know, call Frank Carson to do the math or whatever. On the living phone. Get it? Call. It's... Anyway. But yeah. And the thing is that if you're playing an aggro Boros deck, playing a 2-1 for 3 is like not that exciting, but still, I think a pretty good card. I think if you're like a grindier deck with a bunch of small creatures, this card's obviously a lot better. But I'm not sure what deck would be that, realistically. Like, blue-white's all about enchantments, green-white's all about survival, and then black-white's all about reanimation. So, like, I don't know. I think this card's pretty good, but, like, doesn't really seem to have a great home. Should be a fine limited card, but I don't know. I'm just not really seeing where this card wants to go. Optimistic Scavenger, however, I know exactly where it wants to go. 1 mana for a 1/1 human scout. It's got Eerie, so enchantment, ETB, or unlock a room. Put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. This is basically just that 1-drop from Neon Dynasty, the green creature. That creature saw a ton of play in Constructed, and I think this card will too. If there's an enchantment deck in Constructed, this card will definitely be in it. Putting counters everywhere is awesome. And there's also a lot of good enchantment stuff in the set, and also just in various sets that are already in Standard too. So again, kind of bummer is an enchantment itself, but I think this card's excellent. This card's very, very good. Definitely a chance for constructed play, and then a great limited card also. Card's just great, and there's no cap here. You can just keep playing more enchantments over and over and over again and kind of going nuts, which is great too. So I think this card's great. I think this card's a chance to play multiple formats if there's a deck around it, and then a phenomenal limited card, probably like a mythic level uncommon. So Orphans of the Wheat, man, some of the art in Cycle set is really, really cool. 2 mana for a 2/1 uncommon human. Whenever it attacks, you may tap any number of untapped creatures you control. Gets +1/+1 till end of turn for each creature tapped this way. So this card's obviously a way to tap your survival creatures in limited without risking them in combat. The problem is, it's going to be really hard for this thing to survive in combat, you know? So as a 2/1, I feel like if this card was a 2/2, it would be monumentally better. So you could tap one thing and it would have 3 toughness and it'd be much more likely to survive. That being said, I think if you're a survival deck, this card's totally reasonable. You play this thing on turn 2, play a survival guy on turn 3, attack, enlist basically, get your trigger, they trade, whatever, it's 2-drop. So I think this card's fun. I think this card is pretty reasonable. In limited, not like super exciting, but pretty good. And then also pretty good in specifically good in the survival decks. Without survival synergies, this card's kind of meh. But yeah, pretty cool. It's a solid little card. Overlord of the Mistmoors. No award, but this card's quite good, honestly. So there's a cycle of mythic rares in the set that are the Overlords, and they're kind of similar like the Titans in older sets, where they are a big creature that triggers on ETB or attacking. Now, important to note, these creatures all have the impending abilities. This is a ability only seen on these 5 Overlord cards, 1 for each color as a mythic. And impending is an ability that is kind of like suspend, where you pay a cost and get part of the effect, and then get it later. But you get, I'm sorry, suspend is you pay a cost to get your thing later. This, you pay the cost to get something up front and then get a thing later. So this is a 7 mana 6/6. Whenever it ETBs or attacks, make 2/2/1 flying insects. That's an insanely powerful ability. Making two tokens with 1 card is really good in general, but two power flying tokens is excellent. So that's really, really good. But 7 mana is a lot, right? Well, this has impending 4 mana to impend this card. If you cast a spell for its impending cost, it enters with 4 time counters on it and is not a creature until the last time counter is removed. Beginning of your end step, remove a time counter. So you play this thing on turn 4. You get 2/2/1 flyers, and it sits there on the battlefield, just kind of rotting with 4 counters on it. End step, it goes to 3. Now it's on the clock. Every turn it goes down by 1, down by 1, down by 1. And then if you end up removing the last counter, now you have a 6/6. This happens on your end step, not your upkeep like suspend. So on the 4th turn, it'll be able to block on your opponent's turn, which is kind of nice too. And and just sitting there on the battlefield as an enchantment while you're waiting. It counts for your enchantment things, triggers your eerie effects. This card's pretty good. 4 mana for an enchantment that makes 2/2/1 flyers is reasonable, and then again, the game goes on. So this card's pretty good. I'm not sure exactly. I'm not sure exactly what deck would want this card, but this card's just good. It's just good on base rate. All the overlords are quite good, and unlimited this card is obviously just like a freaking do a backflip. This card's insane. But yeah, so card's very powerful as you would expect a mythic rare to be, and I think this impending ability will play a lot better than it looks, because if you're getting a good thing up front, and now it's just sitting there, it's just so much better than just like playing a sorcery that just gets you tokens. So really good stuff. Overlord of the Mistmoors. Patched Plaything is next. Horrifying. The meta for a 4/3 double strike. Wow, that's good, right? Keep reading. ETBs with 2 -1/-1 counters on it if you cast it from your hand. So this is a fun little puzzle to unlock in Limited, where playing it straight up, we have a 2/1 double strike for 3, which honestly isn't that bad. That's fine, but the real draws here are in black-white. If you can reanimate this in some way, now you didn't cast it, so it's a 4/3 double strike, which is very good. And then also if you can manifest it, so if you can flip it up face up for Manifest Dread, that's also insane too. So there's gonna be a lot of spots in Limited this format where your opponent flips this thing up with Manifest Dread, blows you out in combat, has a 4-power double strike thing, which is kind of crazy too. So the kind of card you got to work for, but the base rate is good enough, and the things you're working for are really good. So I think overall, pretty good Limited uncommon. Just good stuff. Obviously, you put counters on it as well. It's interesting. You almost never see +1/+1 counters and -1/-1 counters in the same set. I actually can't recall ever happening before, because they want to keep it simple for Limited. But there are +1/+1 counters in the set, and they will annihilate them -1/-1 counters. So is what it is. But cool card for Limited. Otherwise, it is cool with Collect Company, that is true too. So, I don't know, maybe in Constructed, you could blink this thing too. Obviously, Constructed, it's possible. A 4/3 double strike is pretty good, but... Possessed Goat, that poor goat. Oh no, the poor little goat. 1 mana for a 1/1 goat creature. It's a common, you pay 3 and discard a card, put 3 +1/+1 counters on the goat, and it becomes a black demon. In addition to its other colors and types, activate only once. This is basically just an enabler for the black-white Reanimator deck in Limited, right? Where you get to discard your big thing. I think you really want to be discarding a card that you like with this, for graveyard value. But even then, I don't know. It is a 4/4. It can attack for 4 on turn 3 in theory also, which is kind of cool, while chipping in, and the threat of activation, they'll never block it. So, I don't know. The cards are okay. Discard a land, your aggro deck also seems reasonable too. So I guess if you're like a very aggressive deck or Reanimator deck, this card's kind of cool. But yeah, Possessed Goat, kind of a cool Limited card. Pretty fun art, cool colors too. Solid Race Up, thanks so much. Next up is Reluctant Role Model. 2 mana for a 2/2 human survivor. Survival. Beginning of your second main phase. If this is tapped, put a flying, a lifelink, or a +1/+1 counter on it. And it says if this or another creature you control dies, if it had counters on it, put those counters on up to 1 target creature. So, basically, if anything in play dies, it's Ocelot style, right? Is that the Ocelot, right? Or if anything would die, or modular, those counters go to something else. And that counts not just this creature, but all your other creatures too. So, if you are playing a cool +1/+1 counter deck, this card could be pretty sweet. That being said, it is just a 2/2 for 2, aside from that. So, I don't know. I think this card's okay. I'm not super thrilled about it, honestly. I think this card could do some cool stuff, but I think the floor of this card is pretty low. I'm not super high on this card for Constructed. It's obviously a great Limited card. It does a bunch of things, which is cool. For Constructed, I don't know. I'm not sure. We'll see. It's a cool card. I love counter decks, but I'm not sure. Savior of a Small is next. 4 mana for a 3/4, another survival creature. And the survival trigger here is to return a creature card, mana value 3 or less, from your graveyard to your hand, not to play, unfortunately. This card's okay. I mean, it's 3/4 for 4, which is not very good. If it returns one thing, you're reasonably happy. But it's, pretty hard for this thing to, do its thing reliably. You need to have the right creature in the graveyard to survive your combat, or somebody to tap it. And then your payoff is getting a creature back. It's small. I don't know. It's okay. You know, if it came back to the battlefield, things would be really, really good. But just going back to your hand is just fine. I think it's mostly like okay filler for the survival deck and not much more. I would want a lot of ways to tap this without attacking. So it's like basically a survival deck only card, I think. But yeah, it's just okay. It's just okay. Seized from Slumber. Man, trying to get some sleep, you know. 5 mana for an instant. It's a target creature. Costs 3 less to cast if it targets a tap creature. It's funny how they keep making this card every set, but a little bit different. So this is, you know, 2 mana kill a tap creature or 5 mana kill anything. That's fine. You know, obviously better in defensive decks. These cards are just very, very similar in all limited formats, so you know what they do at this point. They're good if you're being attacked. They're good in defensive decks. They're passable and not in aggressive decks. They're good in like flyer kind of decks where you're flying in, they're attacking you on the ground, and you're racing. But yeah, it's okay. It's fine. It's a fine limited card. Honestly, for constructed, this is a better version of this card. Yeah, never mind. So 2 mana kill thing is like I think you can look at, but whatever. It's not very good. Shard Mage's Rescue is next, and this card is awesome. I think this card's excellent. Almost won the sleeper reward for me for white, but wasn't quite there. 1 white for an enchantment aura. It's got flash. As long as it has entered the battlefield this turn, the creature has hexproof. Okay. And then it says encounter creature gets +1/+1. So this is kind of like Shore Up or Snakeskin Veil, but it's white. It's an enchantment. So we know those cards are good. We've seen Snakeskin Veil and Shore Up both see play in Standard before. And the upside here, though, is this is an enchantment, not a spell. So this counts all your Eerie things. This counts as an enchantment for Ethereal Armor. I think this card's good. I think this card has a definite chance of constructed. A great limited card. And then I think in constructed just being played straight up as like a Snakeskin Veil, it's fine. But can definitely have a lot more than that in more enchantment-based decks. And this card's also really good in your Eerie deck. This is an instant speed way to trigger all your Eerie effects, which won't happen that often, so it's really good limited for that too. This card's great. This card's super, super awesome. Love it. Sheltered by Ghosts, another really, really interesting aura. It's meant for an uncommon aura. Enchanted creature you control. Whenever it enters, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until this leaves the battlefield. The enchanted creature gets +0/+0 and has lifelink and ward too. So this is sort of like a Banishing Light effect that ties it to a creature. It's sort of like a Banishing Light and then Fiend Hunter had a baby, right? So obviously a creature enchantment is not a very stable thing. Like they kill your creature, get their thing back, yada yada yada. But lifelink and +0/+0 is great, and then ward 2 is also great. It makes the creature harder to kill. And then God forbid you're playing an actual auras deck with the ability to protect your creatures with cards like Shard Mage's Rescue. This is just like a 2 mana rule spell with a bunch of upside. So I think this card's awesome. I think it's really, really good. It will be great in constructed if you're able to build your deck around it. And it's also a non-land permanent. It's not even just creature, which is pretty wild too. So I think this card's great. Another sneaky card for this deck. A lot of good aura cards in this deck. So if you're a Pioneer player, even maybe a Modern player, got your Light Paws, your Sroms, could be a thing too. But yeah, very exciting card. Very, very powerful. Great limited card too. Just good stuff. Shepherding Spirits is next. We have a cycle of land cyclers in this set, like we often do in Limited. This is a 6 mana 4/5 flyer with plane cycling. Important to note that this is more than the sum of its parts here, right? So obviously this card is just fine as a fine limited card. You know, you can plane cycle. It's a big flyer later. But in this set, all these cycling cards have a lot more value because Black-White cares about reanimation. The delirium effects or so on and so forth, because we're putting cards in the graveyard. So the Black-White cyclers in particular are going to be quite good. That being said, a 4/5 flyer for 6, you know, to reanimate, it's like okay, but not like that exciting. It's fine, but fine card for sure. Better in your reanimator decks. Pretty cool. Split Up is next, and I don't know what to make of this card. I really just have no idea. White 1 sorcery. Choose one. Destroy all tapped or untapped creatures. So in your Magical Christmas Land scenario, this is kill all their stuff, all your stuff lives, right? That's great. We like that, right? But it's just not going to be like that all the time, right? So you can convoke all your creatures and tap them and then play this if they have untapped things. If your opponent's attacking you with haste creatures, you can just kill them all. But like, your opponent's playing Monastery Suspire and the 2/2 Haste Mouse, just play Temporary Lockdown, right? So like, as long as Temporary Lockdown exists, This card, I feel like, doesn't really have a niche because the niche it has would be better served by Lockdown. That being said, it's a powerful card, but it's also the kind of card where, like, if your opponent is playing well and knows about it, they can play around it. So, I don't know. I feel like this card is really, really weird. It is good if you're being attacked a lot, because obviously, like, you untap all your creatures, you cast this thing, you kill or tap things, cool. But yeah, it's a very weird card. Probably good in limited though, because it's a wrath you can obviously work your way around. Constructives will probably see play at some point, but again, I think Lockdown does affect that. But yeah, it's just a really, really weird card. We gotta play this card. You know, gotta play with this. I don't know how good it is because I don't really know otherwise. Split Skin Dolls next. 2 mana for a 2/1. When ETBs, draw a card. Then discard a card unless you control a creature power 2 or less. Another creature. So this card's great. I love this card. So the floor here is 2/1 for 2, EDB, draw, discard. Which is like fine. That card's seen play before in like, you know, various spots where you want to get things in the graveyard. But if you control literally any other small creature, this is just 2/1 ETB draw card, which is also awesome. You know, so it's an artifact for some artifact things. It's cheap. I think this card's awesome. I think this card's really, really good. Phenomenal limited card. I think it's definite player constructed. You're just playing other creatures and stuff. It's an artifact, which is kind of cool too. Card's great. Card's really, really good. And it's really, again, like cute but morbid art. The Wandering Rescuer. 5 mana, 3/4. We see the Wandering Emperor here as a creature. I guess desparked, right? Legendary creature, Human Samurai Noble. Really weird card. This is a 3/4, 5 mana 3/4 flash. Has Convoke. Has Double Strike. And then it says other tap creatures you control have hexproof. So obviously this is cute, right? You can at instant speed Convoke to cast this, and then things you convoke now have hexproof, so you can save your own stuff. This is an insane limited card because the rate on this card is really, really good. But like, what constructed deck would want this card? I just don't really know. And like, if you're not attacking with your creatures, your opponent's not going to try and kill them, so you can't save them. It's just like, it's a really, really weird card. You know, I don't know exactly. It also, if you're playing a Convoke deck, usually you're going wide. So, and this is a card that goes tall. It's a 3/4 double striker. So like, they just have this go for the throat that wasn't very good in their hand, and they have a target for it, which is really cool too. So, I don't know. This card's very, very weird. It's obviously a limited bomb. But overall, I don't know. I just think this card like doesn't really have a spot in Constructed. I could be wrong. But we'll see. Great limited card, obviously, but Constructed, I just don't really see where it would go. Old Toby! Beastie Befriender, folks. Wake up. No nightmares here. We got a sleeper card. This card looks very silly. Alright, we have a 3 mana for a 1/1 legendary human wizard. When ETBs make a 4/4 beast token with this creature can't attack or block alone. And it says, as long as you control 4 more creature tokens you control flying. That part's not that important. What's important here is you have a Blade Splicer that makes a 4/4. And even though it has to attack or block with something else, 4/4 is big. This is effectively 5/5 worth of stats for 3 mana over 2 bodies. And all the synergy things can happen here, right? We can blink this thing. It's not a legendary token, so you can copy it with Caretaker's, whatever it's called. So I think if a token was a legend, I would be a lot more iffy with this card. But you can copy this token to your heart's content. You can blink it. You have an Anthem in play. It's a 5/5 and a 2/2. I think this card's just good. I think this card is just like a super solid card on rate that can do a lot of cool things. Card's dope. That's not very complicated. It's just a simple card, but it's really, really cool. So, big fan of Toby. Great limited card also. Trapped in the screen. It's an O-Ring. No mana for enchantment. ETB, exile, artifact, creature, or enchantment. It's got ward 2. It's obviously a great common. It's actually not only a great common, it's... Boom! The Bombin Common, I forgot. Bombin Common. And nothing crazy here. This is Banishing Light with upside and limited. The ward ability is great. It's an enchantment for Eerie. So basically, think about how good Banishing Light was in the last set. This card is a lot better because it has ward, and it's a set that cares about enchantments too. So, card's great. Fringe player constructed, but great card overall. Next up is the Hover Ship. No, sir, I don't like it. White 1 for a vehicle. ETB, exile up to 1 target creature with toughness 5 or less. Whenever it leaves the battlefield, the controller manifests dread. So this is kind of like a Skyclave apparition kind of card. I almost made this my trap card, but I wasn't really willing to go that far on it. But I don't know. I think that the body here is just so weak. It is a I'm sorry, Manifest Dread. Manifest Dread is an ability where just like Manifest, which meant you take the top card of your library, put it face down as a 2/2, and you can flip it up for its mana cost. Manifest Dread means look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one face down as a 2/2, and then one in your graveyard. It's a very, very powerful ability. So the issue here is that like your opponent Manifest Dread, that's very, very good. This can kill a Shielder or whatever, but I'm afraid the body just isn't really good enough. I don't know. This card might be good, but I don't think it's great. It is a way to crew and tap your survivors. Great limited card for sure, but constructed, I'm not really there. Untelling Quins, Trins, Draft Common. Again, Manifest Dread is insane. Here's the full write-out on it. Again, look at top 2. One goes face down as a creature. You can flip up its mana value, mana cost, and then one goes to the graveyard. The old, 2/2/2s for 4 is pretty good limited usually, and Manifest Dread is really, really good. Card selection, cards in the graveyard, and then obviously the upside of like flipping it too. I think it's very, very good. But this card's great. Great limited card. Not much more. That's good. And then Unwanted makes our last white card here, and this card is terrible. 1 mana instant. Destroy creature is control of Manifest Dread. We just talked about how good Manifest Dread is. You don't want your opponent to do that. Right, Cassian? You don't want your opponent to Manifest Dread because that's rough. So, not worth it at all. Just a really, really bad removal spell. But you can target your own things, which is reasonable. But that's like not very good, right? So I think this card's really, really bad. The kind of card people will be like, well, I get to kill their Shielder, right? Just play a real removal spell. Don't play a card because you don't really need it. So that's that. So I'm sorry, one card left. Veteran Survivors are our last white card. I apologize. I thought this was last card. 1 mana for a 2/1 survival. Survival ability is exile a card from your graveyard. And if this thing is exiled 3 or more cards, it gets +3/+3 and it's hexproof. This card's awesome. Just a Savannah line with a bunch of upside. Graveyard hits me very, very good in this set because obviously there's a bunch of graveyard things happening. So this card's very, very good. It's a human also, which is nice. So if it was a human deck, a survivor deck, this is definitely a playable card constructed. And then a great limited card too. Card sweet. It's a good card, Cassian. It's a good card, right? So, the rooms. I've got the rooms. Shit. So on to our rooms. All right. So the rooms are enchantments that are split cards. Okay. So basically, you play one half of the room as an enchantment, and this unlocks the room and does whatever it says. And then it sits in play. And at any point you want, as you can play a sorcery, you can just play the other half too. So Dazzling Theater and Prop Room here. You play Dazzling Theater, it stays in play with both, and you can unlock Prop Room at any point you want as a sorcery, and it kind of like makes that one on too. It is only 1 enchantment in play, but the way Eerie is worded, it will. That's right, two enchantments. But the way Eerie is worded, it will also trigger Eerie as well. So Dazzling Theater is a 4 mana enchantment room. Creatures you follow you control have Convoke. And then the 3 mana side, Prop Room, is untap each creature you control during each other player's untap step. I think this card's just awful. A 4 mana enchantment to give your things Convoke is very, very bad. It's not very exciting at all. And then you get to untap your things too for 3 more mana, but like that's not very exciting either. This mostly feels like a commander card, but otherwise really, really not super exciting. The unlocking a room uses a stack. It's not casting a spell, but it's basically like you're casting the spell, but you're not actually casting it. It does use a stack. So yeah, feels like a commander card, kind of a go big kind of card is what it is, but not very exciting. Up next is Doll Maker's Shop and Porcelain Gallery.
It's a trap.
Our trap card, folks. This one, it looks like it could be cool, but I don't think it's very good. 2 mana for Doll Maker's Shop. Whenever 1 or more non-toys you control attacks, make a 1/1 toy token. 6 mana for Porcelain Gallery. Creatures you control have base power on top of the equal number of creatures you control. This feels like the White Virtue, right? Where it's 2 mana, make a creature, and then pay a bunch of mana later on and get a huge pump on your creatures. These kind of play like adventures, honestly. But the problem is that like this requires you to have attackers. It only makes a 1/1, and then 6 mana is just so much. So much. So this is a great limited card, for sure. But as far as constructed goes, I think this card is like just not really there. The White Virtue is just much more exciting. Just don't think this card is that good, unfortunately. So that's your trap card for white. Grand Entryway is a common room. It's actually, I think, excellent. Makes a 1/1 Glimmer enchantment token. And then the Elegant Rotunda is 3 mana for a room. Whenever you unlock this door, put a counter on each of its 2 creatures. I think this card's insane. I think this is a really, really good limited card. Possible, like, best Bombin Common kind of a limited card. It's double Eerie triggers as well as some buffs too. I think this card's great. Great limited card. Nothing more, but great, great limited card. Surgical Suite and Hospital Room. Surgical Suite is 2 mana for enchantment. If you unlock this door, return a creature mana value 3 or less. And the room is whenever you attack but a counter-attacking creature. This card's not bad, honestly. But 2 mana for 2 mana, like an adventure card, you want 1/2 to be really good. And 2 mana to return a creature is fine, you know, and the attacking thing is good too. I think this is mostly just a really good good limited card, because that second Hospital Room is a good limited card, but overall not that exciting. As if for white. Shit, sorry. So recap, Best in Shows, Enduring Innocence. Toby's our sleeper card. Trapped in Screens are Bombin Common, and our Dominator Shop is our trap card. So that's white. More to come, all the colors. YouTube folks, love you, like, comment, subscribe. You're all great. Peace.